Dajahan, hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel. And today I am finally back to continue my read along for Mordu. We are starting on volume 3 today. And yeah, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. There was something weird about the audio, it seemed very loud. I'm hoping it's back to the way it's supposed to be now. If not, hopefully actually a little better, because now I actually don't have to stoop in order to get close to the mic, because I finally figured out how to use my mic after owning it for 2 years. Anyway, hi, sorry, that's chaotic. I'm Janae. If you're new here, I read anime, and we are back with a digital read along, in the sense that I don't have the physical book because the physical book translation does not exist yet. So I have the doc open here. I'm hoping it'll be a little bit easier to navigate than the previous way I had it laid out. But also, hi, sorry. Okay, I'm a little bit scatterbrained because I'm readjusting to having it here on screen instead of a physical book. Somehow the physical book felt a bit easier. We have coffee here with me. We're gonna take a 10-minute break on the hour. I'm planning on doing a 2-hour stream. That's generally how it's been done, but I've been a bit ill recently, so I've had to cut it down to 1 hour the last few times, but hopefully today we are doing 2 hours. So I hope everyone is well, and yeah, for anyone who maybe is dropping in for the first time, we left off with kind of the confrontation of the what would you call it, the Lolita case, I guess. So we finished off with that entire arc, and now we are moving on to the next one, I think, or at least that's the way it seems. Yeah, no, I had to like go back and double check everything, because I also kind of like was not 100% on where we had left off. But yeah, I'm hoping we can just do volume 3, and then we will be going back to Urha volume 6 for August, and then September we'll be back for another volume of Mordu. So I'm very excited about that. But with all that said, I think we can basically just get started. You might notice me like struggling a bit because I realize when I shift from one author to another, it takes me a little bit of an adjustment period where I get used to their styles again. But generally I find Priest quite easy to read, so I don't think it should be too much of a problem. Anyway, chapter 59, Reading Aloud 2. When Luo Wenjie left the interrogation room, he felt he was somewhat delirious. The lengthy and strenuous process of interrogation was a sort of torment for both parties, especially when faced with the suspect with Shu Wenchao's psychological quality. Not giving the other party a chance to catch a breath in fact meant having no time to catch a breath yourself. Fair enough. While those rushing around outside were still seeking all kinds of evidence, the interrogator and the interrogated had to read between the lines of each other's expressions for involuntary betrayed traces of information to mutually deceive and mutually judge. Oh goodness. How much evidence do they actually have? How much did Su Luozhan actually say? Where did he just contradict himself? Which of his words could be true? Which of his words are dodges to get away from major topics? Are they tricking me? How can I trick him to get him to confess? Ooh, whoa, okay, this is also gonna be me just bumping into things, it seems. The least slackening and Shu Wenchao would immediately have seized the opportunity to quibble and retract. It was hopeless to think of substituting another interrogator. Everything from Luo Wenjie's neck up had basically shut down. Wholly relying on muscle memory, he mechanically navigated to his office. Chutong's parents had heard the news and rushed off to Binhai without listening to any counsel to the contrary. Only Guo Heng was left. Lo Wenzhou saw his back and thought that Guo Heng was sleeping. He instinctively lightened his steps and picked up a uniform jacket someone had tossed nearby. He was about to drape it over him when Guo Heng suddenly looked up. The wrinkles around his eyes extended in complex twists and turns from the bridge of his nose to his temples, like the cracks in parched earth. In his eyes, their slight yellowed white shot through with blood vessels. There wasn't a trace of sleep. The previously bustling office of the Criminal Investigation Team was utterly silent. The people were either still busy elsewhere, or else they hadn't been able to stand it any longer and had gone to sleep. I mean, they have been on their feet for forever, so I'm not surprised. The two men looked at each other wordlessly. Their air seemed glued together, thick and motionless. The wind of the most powerful air conditioning couldn't have blown it away. After a long time, Guo Heng spoke first with difficulty. Your leader, surnamed Lu, told me everything. Lo Wenzhou slowly pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. He didn't give me too many specifics, said Guo Heng. He said you were still verifying some details. Can you tell me the particulars now? Lo Wenzhou paused. On that summer day 20 years ago, Guo Fei by chance got acquainted with a girl who said she had come to Lotus Mountain with her teacher. The girl was wearing a floral patterned dress and looked very pretty, but she seemed to have no sense of direction at all. She asked her the way several times. One day, when she got out of cram school, Guo Feng met the girl again. The girl seemed very worried, claimed that the teacher she'd come with was in the hospital, and she couldn't find the way back to the hotel alone. Guo Fei was a warm-hearted child. At the end of each term, the teachers all commented that she was willing to help others. To this day, the records in the Lotus Mountain Elementary Schools the records are in the Lotus Mountain Elementary School's archives. She tried to explain the directions a few times, but the girl still didn't understand. It was only a little detour anyway, she thought. She'd only be a few minutes late, so she decided to personally take the girl where she wanted to go. From the first time he had mentioned the name of Guo Fei, Guo Heng had been shaking uncontrollably. His turbid tears rolled from the corners of his eyes, redirected by rows after rows of wrinkles to the white hair at his temple. At this point, Lo Wenzhou stopped for a moment and put his hand on Guo Heng's shoulder. Put together, the skinny shoulders and the heaving chest looked like a slimy and old-fashioned broken-down bellows. Okay, that sentence doesn't make sense to me, but okay. We're still at the Lolita. These few chapters are also part of that arc, another in between of the two arcs. Okay, it is weird to me because these are apparently the volumes broken up. So I don't know why they decided to break up the volumes in that way. Guo Heng took a difficult breath. Talk. Keep talking. That girl. She was Su Xiaolan. She tricked Guo Fei into taking a drink that had been drugged. She left her in the hotel, waiting for the killer Wu Guangchuan to get out of the hospital. Wu Guangchuan used his poor health as an excuse to get away from the rest of his team and take one of the company cars. After murdering Guo Fei, Wu Guangchuan hid her in the trunk of the car and left Lotus Mountain. Su Xiaolan took Guo Fei's pencil box. Though he knew, judging from Su Xiaolan's diary, the uniformity of the method of the crimes and the other facts, that the one who'd murdered Guo Fei must in fact have been Su Xiaolan. Lo Wen-jo used his seemingly objective tone to lightly twist the facts. Su Xiaolan had a twisted relationship with the killer that made her very jealous of the victim. In the middle of their offense, an altercation occurred between Su Xiaolan and the killer because of this. She fiercely got out of the car, ran down the slope you discovered, saw the public phone next to the waste transfer station, and suddenly thought of a means of relief. To call you and let you hear that scream, and also to let you hear the pencil box. Why would she? Why? Because she was jealous that Guofei had parents like you, had a happy home, had grown up into a little girl 10,000 times better than her, had things she wouldn't possess even after living another 20 years. At his tone, Guo Heng looked at Lo Wen-jo for a time and couldn't speak. Uncle Guo, you didn't kill the wrong person then. You were only too kind-hearted. You didn't suspect the other person in that house at all, Lo Wen-jo said quietly. But because you killed Wu Guangchun in front of her, Su Xiaolan was intimidated. She knew for the first time that doing these things would call down retribution. Her life afterwards was painful and deformed, and frequency of her crimes was greatly reduced. You virtually saved quite a few potential victims, over 100 at least. But Guo Heng covered his eyes, unable to speak for tears. Uncle Guo, said Lo Wen-jo. Don't say it. Guo Heng absently waved a hand at him. Don't trouble yourself to find pleasant-sounding words to comfort me. Thank you. Because he'd rashly stabbed Wu Guangchun back then and scared Su Xiaolan out of using the same method to torment victims' relatives, even making her alter her methods, the records of these murdered little girls had afterwards vanished among numerous other missing children, only coming to light once more fully 20 years later. Guo Heng had been impulsive and easily angered, but he wasn't at all stupid. He could pick out this type of obviously flawed lie. Sorry, I'm struggling a little bit. Hi. So, where's my Fei now? Su Hui, the principal offender from back then, didn't participate in that case. So our conjecture is that Guofei must be along the national road that led to from Lotus Mountain to the city at that time. Can you still find her? Are you still looking? We can find her, said Lo Wen-jo. A person can't be made to vanish just like that. She must still be hidden somewhere. There are always traces. Even if we can't find her for a time, there will still be hope. Even if others forget, I'll remember. Set your mind at ease. Guo Heng left the city bureau by the first rays of another morning. Lo Wen-jo watched him go until he was out of sight. He didn't know what would happen to Guo Heng now. But whether he was 60, 70, or 80, a person still had to live, still had to keep going through his days, still had to turn his eyes forward. Perhaps Lo Wen-jo was only consoling himself, but he thought that Guo Heng's back had seemed a little straighter. Lo Wen-jo dragging heavy steps, returned to his office and half collapsed into his chair. He let out a long breath, then felt he seemed to have forgotten something. He looked up and saw a cup of already cool coffee set on his desk. Right, he had made Fei Duo wait for him. But clearly young Master Fei couldn't wait in the bureau for him all night. He must have left long ago. Imagine he didn't. I kinda would die. As Lo Wen-jo picked up the cup of coffee in confusion and looked it up and down, a hand reached out from beside him and lifted the cup. Then a dim thread of Muxiang cologne entered his nose from the cuff of the person's sleeve. Lo Wen-jo subconsciously breathed in, his nose going a little dry. Pei Du had once again crawled out of some expensive hotel. He changed his clothes. Under Law and Jewel's confused gaze, he put the breakfast and coffee packed up by the hotel on the table. Law and Jewel subconsciously said, "You really must have nothing better to do. Every day you stay at the hotel instead of going home. Does your company run the place?" Not Feidu being like, "I will subject myself to a hotel so I can take care of my husband." "You could say that," Feidu answered matter-of-factly. "I own 60% of the interest." Jewel, ... Big bosses who flaunted their wealth in front of the salaried class on purpose were all a-holes. "Didn't you tell me to wait for you because you had some things you wanted to say to me?" "Oh, right." Jewel opened the coffee and drank a big mouthful, attempting to use the coffee to find his lost brain. "I wanted to tell you." What had he been going to say? Jewel stopped, finding in wonder that there was a temporary break in his memory. However, he rifled through it. He still came up empty. He couldn't remember a single punctuation mark, experiencing an early symptom of Alzheimer's. "Jewel, you are not that old. Calm down." Feidu's white shirt was starting to look a little dazzling, almost giving him double vision. "To tell you..." Feidu watched him babble some words as if talking in his sleep. Then he tilted sideways, following the back of the chair. He'd actually fallen asleep like that. Feidu deftly propped up the coffee still in Law and Jewel's hand, lightly rescuing the cup that had almost fallen to the floor. Then he arranged Law and Jewel's hand in a comfortable position. The man was frowning faintly. He looked very wan, his eyelids folded into 3 layers and his ordinarily very clean-shaven chin covered in stubble, oddly giving him something of the dejected uncle feeling. Oh my goodness. Oh, if this man hears it, he will never recover. His face looked as if it had thinned out. After working non-stop for 48 hours, even an immortal would be dispirited. Of course his face wouldn't look very good, but somehow his usual air of a glib-tongued young lordling had disappeared, and something more profound and substantial had been left behind in its wake. I love how Feidu's like, you know, he looks scruffy, but he still looks attractive, because that's what I'm reading there. He's like, oh yeah, no, he doesn't have his usual appeal, but now he has like some other appeal going on that I still like. Feidu turned and leaned on his desk, reaching out 2 fingers to lift Law and Jewel's chin. For a moment he gently scrutinized his face, like a collector of antiques scrutinizing and fondling a piece of Rue official wear. Oh my goodness. After a moment he stood up straight and sighed soundlessly, admitting that he had been moved by this face. Okay. Nang Chao dragged her steps like a dead dog. Dragging her steps like a dead dog, had just rolled back in from outside. She thought she could sleep soundly lying down in the middle of the road, but when she raised her head and unfortunately encountered the scene, all the drowsiness filling her head was startled out of existence. She felt that all the domineering Director General... I'm not gonna say that. Novels she read in her life were blowing past before her eyes with a whistle. Standing dumbstruck in the doorway, the policewoman became a stiff corpse. Oh my goodness. You're correct. The volume, this volume is Arc 3. The read aloud chapters are just in between chapters. Okay. My sure doesn't sound like you're describing Arrival. Oh goodness. The domineering Director General, harboring evil intentions, wasn't in the least flustered. He turned his head, blinked at her, and gave her an unusually thought-provoking smile. He pointed at the big bag of food next to him, indicating that she should help herself. Then he picked up the coffee Law and Joe had just drunk and sipped it, floating out. Yes, sure, give me more indirect kisses. I'm sure I'm fine, totally. The light of the rising sun stabbed Taran's eyes so he couldn't quite open them. His colleagues, who had rushed over to assist, took over from him, and he went to rest. He carelessly shook the swirl off of himself and got into a random car. Don't ever get into a random car, even if you're totally sleep deprived. Like, Taran, come on, I know that you're a cop, but that's why you should be careful, actually. Just then, his phone vibrated. A photograph came from Changning of herself with Changchen in her arms, tightly clinging to her bigger sister's clothes, but still struggling to smile at the camera. The doctor said Changchen's injuries were all right and she could leave the hospital. My aunt says we have to thank all of you. Another day, could I ask you and your colleagues to come over for a meal? For the first time, Taran didn't immediately respond to the goddess's messages. Holding his phone, he fell asleep. I'm still on about the fact that he just fell asleep in a random car. All the slash smut she read. We want recommendations, queen. Oh my goodness, could you imagine? I haven't observed her having any other Fujoshi, Fudanshi characters that I can think of. Though I might just not have read the ones that have them. Fedu took a taxi back to his office. Before the workday had started, he signed the documents he'd promised Assistant Mao he would, then sat down for a while in a tastefully decorated office. This was the old President Vei's office from before. At the door was a waiting room with a liquor cabinet concealed in the wall. Next to it was a large bookcase that reached the ceiling. The upper half was a collection of all kinds of only extant copies, sheepskin rolls, silks, and even bamboo slips, everything you could want. The lower half displayed the watch collection of the office's previous master. The other wall was a display case entirely covered in glass, hung full of ancient weaponry. Among them was a broadsword that was said to have been carried by an ancient emperor. The grip was elegant. After all these years, the blade was still bright as snow. Under the cold light of the display case, it looked as though it was about to break out of the case to eat flesh and drink blood. That's quite intense. Damn. Between the couches was a stand 1.4 meters tall, round displaying its edges. Displaying around its edges all kinds of currency no longer in circulation. Surrounding a small display in the center were the works of 3 successive winners of a certain international jewelry design competition. Oh my word, okay, I'm struggling with the sentence and I can't pinpoint why, but the words are just not wording. Let me try that entire thing again. Between the couches was a stand 1.4 meters tall, round, displaying around its edges all kinds of currency no longer in circulation. Surrounding a small display in the center were the works of 3 successive winners of a certain international jewelry design competition were arranged. That still sounds weird. only 3 years. Before the 4th years could have been put there, the collector himself had gone to lie in the seaside sanitarium like a corpse. I mean, is the sanitarium not where you go because you are a corpse? Anyway, everyone on first arriving to his office would be shocked by the small-scale museum in the waiting room. If a person lingered there for long, money, authority, ambition, and desire would be ready to simply pour out of all his pores. The office, meanwhile, was half separated from and half connected to the waiting room, linked by a passage wide enough for only one person to pass through. There was a clever curve to the passage that prevented the light from the office from getting in. On 2 sides, the office had small windows for ventilation, while in the back was a huge floor-to-ceiling window from which one could clearly look down on the half of Yan City. The flow of traffic slowly lining up, and the pedestrians as small as ants, all visible at a glance. Fedu stood and took a not especially thick folder from a locked filing cabinet. In the folder were some contracts, financial statements, and explanations of changes in major assets. It was a collaboration undertaken in the conglomerate's name with a Guangyao fund. When his father had reigned, he'd collaborated with the fund and made a fixed contribution to its subsidiary public interest fund. The contract term had already expired and the collaboration had naturally come to an end. The other party had shown no signs of wanting to renew the contract. And, lying quietly at the bottom of the pile of documents, was a project plan for Binhai Marine Resources Recreational Holy Land, making a Chinese Maldives. It had required an investment from them. Back then, his father, who had laid down the law for a board of directors, had refused with the reason of capital investments comparatively large, no mature profit model, and it had come to nothing. Binhai. Fedu heavily traced a line on it with the cap of his pen. The 3 great principles of disposing of a body. Oh joy, okay. First, the place where the body is disposed is absolutely safe. No one outside of your control will come to dig it up, and no one will discover the secret under the earth. Second, a place where you could hide the body among ordinary corpses, so anyone who found it wouldn't call the police. Third, even if they did call the police would have no way of determining the identity of the deceased. The third principle had been usable 20 years earlier, but today, with the development of all kinds of criminal investigation forensic technologies, it basically couldn't be realized. So, given Xu Wenchao's IQ, he would definitely adhere to the first 2. Why would he choose Binhai? If he threw the bodies off the coast, there would be a great risk of them being fished up. To throw them further out, however, would require a means of getting out to sea, and it couldn't be done in all seasons. There would have to be some bodies that could only be buried on dry land. There was nothing in the origins or experiences of Xu Wenchao and the 3 generations of the Su family to show that they had any connection to the city of Binhai. So what reason had made Xu Wenchao choose it? Could it just have been the freelance photographer happening to think that the scenery was beautiful and untouched? A week later, with the collaboration of the police in both places, the dust at last settled on this unusually complicated, unusually lengthy, and unusually sensational major case. Under all kinds of coercion and cajolery, the pianist from the racetrack had finally identified one of the other 4 men in the photographs. They had a very strict system of enrollment. They had to have someone introduce them. At first, they only had permission to take the little girl Sushalan out to eat. They had to spend a great deal of money and maintain a relationship for a very long time before they were permitted to become senior members. This is disgusting. As the members mutually identified each other, it was like picking a radish out of the ground and getting the whole string, including those who weren't in the photographs, old members who'd already withdrawn from the transactions. Among them was actually no lack of respectable seeming successful personage. There was quite a sensation when the police came to their doors. Closely according to the line of thought Fedu had supplied, Gurfei's body was found in a wild grave in the village along the national road from Lotus Mountain to the city. The people who lived there said that before they'd practiced cremation, the place had been specially used to bury the bodies of those who had died violent deaths or who had died young. The place had many superstitious legends, and usually no one dared to approach. Back then, there had been a villager who'd gotten drunk and mistakenly wandered in. He'd happened to discover a burial mound that shouldn't have been there, gotten scared out of his wits, and spread a good number of ghost stories. That makes sense. Unfortunately, due to the taboo, no one had gone to check. The news, evidence collection, public charges, the follow-up work was non-stop. When it came to an end, Law and Jaw suddenly realized that it was already the middle of September. On the first day, he resumed the life of a normal working hours. He hadn't yet had time to celebrate when he saw a little sports car stopped at the gates, with a familiar scoundrel standing next to it, smiling as he watched a traffic cop hand out a ticket. Oh my goodness, why do I love Fedu so much? He's such a troublemaker, but he's very focused on only really causing trouble to Law and Jaw, and I kind of love that. Okay. We're halfway through the first hour and we've only done one chapter. That is slow going. I'm sorry. Chapter 60. Macbeth 1. Ooh. Are we gonna deal with, like, witches? In a sense, like someone maybe practicing witchcraft? I don't know. Before Law and Jaw could react, Lang Chao walking behind him, sucked in a big breath. These last few weeks, Lang Chao had often remembered Feidu's secretive look before he'd left that day. Each day on the way to and from work, she'd let her imagination fly. She'd already gone through a string of labels like seizing by force and, oh my goodness, sadomasochistic love, visualizing a soul-stirring erotic television drama. Only there'd been too much stress at work lately, so she hadn't had time to leak any spoilers to Law and Jaw, one of the main characters. I am so glad you have not, because I think Law and Jaw would deduct your salary to almost zero. An autumn rain shower had passed a few days before. Comrade Lang Chao was so startled by Feidu's sudden appearance that she stepped into a pool of water at the gate and nearly fell flat on her face, flailing her limbs and clinging onto the wall. Hearing the movement, Law and Jaw turned to look at her. First this damn... Okay. This damn guy jeered at her pose. Then he said, "Why are you wearing high heels to work? None of us can see you unless we're looking down. We all know you're short." Damn! Law and Jaw, was that necessary? That feels intense. Queen's brain is just coming up with scenes, yeah. Lang Chao, ... She rolled her eyes and straightened out her heel with difficulty, firmly biting back the warning she'd been about to give him. She thought, well, it's his funeral. Formally, Feidu had worked during the day and fooled around at night. He'd come to harass Tauran from time to time, but mostly only to present some new toy as a gift. He hadn't reported to the Public Security Bureau every day for no reason. Lowendo had frequently worried about him before, although that had been while he'd still been little. Since Feidu had grown into a 36-degree scoundrel without a blind spot, there had been nothing worth worrying about. I mean, I think there's still something to worry about, just something different. The city was always active, and everyone was running around toiling. There was also the rush of traffic and the sea of people to separate them. It wasn't unusual for ordinary friends to not see each other for a few months, but not much more than a month after the last time President Fei had come running to the city bureau to send some comfort. Lowenjo suddenly had a strange feeling, as if he hadn't seen him in a very long time. Feidu's car was as flashy as before, but he himself seemed much more in line with conventional norms. He wasn't wearing glasses. There was an earpiece hanging loosely from one of his ears. His cotton shirt had for once been buttoned up just below the top collar button, and, in an extremely rare occurrence, he was wearing jeans. His hair had been casually pushed back, displaying his clear, handsome brow. It was as if something had washed his whole soul clean. All traces of the air of the scum of literati were gone. At a glance, he looked like a slightly rebellious, but not over the line, art student. I don't know which part to focus on first. The fact that Feidu seems to have attempted to clean up his image for the benefit of Lo and Jo, or the fact that Lo and Jo felt it necessary to write an essay about how good Feidu still looks. Which one do you guys think is more telling? As a short person, I feel Lo and Jo, but also heels and police work, not a very effective combo. I think unless you know for a fact you're only going to be doing paperwork for an entire day, heels are just not recommended for effective work. Just keep them for after office hours of any kind. Dora just pulled a good boy look to fit the circumstances and seduce a certain someone. Also not very platonic on your part, Lord. Exactly. Hands in his pockets, Law and Jaw strolled over in front of Feidu, internally cursing in spite of himself. There were innumerable types of male beauties in this world, and Law and Jaw was interested in a fairly broad range of them. He could appreciate the Western aesthetic, full to bursting with masculine hormones and brimming with force. He could also appreciate the traditional aesthetic, clear as the moon, gentle as jade. As long as they didn't display Feidu's revolting behavior, he wouldn't turn any of them down. President Fei was the type he found most unendurable, simply a cobra in human shape. He was immaculately groomed. It was impossible to tell whether he was telling the truth or shaming. He had so many eyes trained on the world that getting close to him could make you feel a touch of trypophobia. There was a sharp and intense feeling of invasiveness about him. If you didn't want to be manipulated by him, you would have to keep your nerves subconsciously strained. Never mind appreciation. Lowendraw's head hurt at the thought of him. Never mind appreciation, my foot. But the style he was attracted to at first sight was a clean and straightforward, somewhat distinctive one. Add in some good looks, and it basically hit him dead center in his most vulnerable points. For example, the way Feidu looked right now. The fact that there's emphasis on how on purpose this was on Feidu's part. Like, we kind of knew it was on purpose, but the fact that he probably actually exactly knew what this would do to Lu and Jo and did it. Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Feidu was young after all. When he retracted his venomous fangs, he could conjure up a look of brimming youthfulness, mixing the truth with the false. Lowenjo waved a hand, dismissing the little traffic cop from the department next door. He patted the roof of Feidu's car and pointed to the commercial building across the street. Turn right and there's a shopping center, didn't you see? That's where the nearest parking lot is. Outside of special circumstances, the public's cars can't randomly park at the Public Security Bureau's gates. You need a parking permit. Feidu gave him a wholly unclouded smile. How do I get a parking permit? We don't sell long-term parking permits wholesale or retail. First, you have to be City Bureau's personnel. If you can't manage that, you have to be the family member of the City Bureau personnel. And my brain just went, so Feidu is gonna, like, instate gay marriage so that he can become the parking, like, the City Bureau personnel's family member? Is that what I'm hearing here? Lowenjo, not turning a hair, lowered his eyes, giving his stimulated eyeballs a break. You want a parking permit just for opening your mouth? Do you have the status, President Fei? A few days after getting your cars taken off, you were driving around raising hell all over the place. What are you doing here now? Without answering, Feidu asked, You didn't drive today? I lent my car to a colleague to use to go on a date. Ooh, said Lowenjo. Feidu narrowed his eyes and opened the car door. Perfect. Do you want to get in? Lowenjo, ... This movement of Feidu's stirred up a light wind. Lowenjo found to his surprise that he hadn't sprayed on any cologne today. The smell that came from him was a mixture of the detergent from his shirt and some shaving lotion. It was clear and clean, like an autumn breeze washed by cool rain. You know, you can just say you're already in love. You don't have to, like, be flowery about it. We get it. This joker had to be doing it on purpose. Lowenjo's mind was alert, but his limbs rebelled against his brain, taking the initiative to get into the car. Feidu very gracefully shut the car door for him and was just walking around to the other side when he saw a wimpy kid with a dilapidated briefcase on his back run out of the City Bureau and look all around. It was Taran. Oh, okay, I thought that he legit meant a kid, not that. Feidu stopped in the middle of opening the car door and called to him. Go. Hey! Taran grabbed at his hair and walked over to him. His observations were very sloppy. He didn't notice anything different between Feidu's get-up today and his usual one. This crowd, they realized they didn't need to work overtime today, and in the time it took me to go to the bathroom, they all ran off, apart from the officer on duty. What are you doing here? I came by to do something. Mm-hmm, said Feidu. Oh, okay, Taran said carelessly, not even asking what he was doing. I was just going to call you. Chang Ning said that Chen Chen's parents want to find a time to invite everyone over to eat. Will you go? Feidu let out a long, "Oh." What? Said Taran. Go to Chen Chen's house. When the time comes, we'll be responsible for chatting with the parents, turning the gazers away, and you'll be responsible for helping Cheng Ning Jie clean up and prepare food. Feidu lazily leaned against the roof of the car. Or you could urge them to prepare a bit of wine, pour a bit into everyone, then have Cheng Ning responsible for seeing each one of them off while you drive the car. The best thing would be for us third-wheelers to vanish as soon as we walked out the door. Then you can conveniently take her to enjoy the night breeze, see a movie or something. Taran hadn't thought so much about it originally. Having Feidu's brief description to light the path ahead, he sparkled all over. He felt uncomfortable speaking and only stood there with a captivated smile. Oh goodness. Just then, the car window facing Taran rolled down, and Lo Wen-jo irritably said to him, "Enough, I get the gist of this meal. I'll pass it on to our comrades tomorrow. Could I trouble you not to stand by the side of the road, torturing the single dogs? Mind our image." Don't worry, Lo Wen-jo, you're not going to be single for very long. Taran had never expected that he would one day see Lo Wen-jo in Feidu's car. He gave a tremendous start. Like a sleepwalker, he looked at Lo Wen-jo, then looked at Feidu. He went back and forth 3 times, suspecting that his mind was somewhat clouded. He then gave a subconscious "oh," rubbed his eyes, and obediently left. When he had walked fully 50 meters away, Deputy Captain Tao's lengthy reflexes of finally finished running its course, and his brain reacted as if he had an electric shock. Wait, was that Lo Wen-jo in Feidu's car just now? Lo Wen-jo, male, interested in men. Feidu, male, interested in humans. Okay. His thought process is not wrong, even though it doesn't automatically equate to that, generally speaking. Taran swiftly turned his head back, his neck cracking in protest. The little sports car had been parked at the curb just now, had cheerfully driven out into the road, converging with the immense flow of traffic. There wasn't a sign of it. A hallucination, Taran concluded, making a great show of nodding earnestly as he walked stiffly away. Turn left at the intersection up ahead. They're repairing the road, you can't get through, Lo Wen-jo directed dully, as if he really was just hitching a ride home. He'd asked once why Feidu had come. The little person... I don't want to say that. Let's just go with scoundrel. The little scoundrel, deliberately mystifying, hadn't answered. Lo Wen-jo simply hadn't asked again, waiting with perfect composure for him to issue a reply. But Feidu calmly drove him all the way home without talking any nonsense. We're here, Lo Wen-jo, ... Wait, was that it? Now what? Oh goodness, I love them. They're so chaotic. We're really here. I just wanted to drive you while I was on my way. Feidu very acutely picked up on some bewilderment from his gaze. A very Feidu smile hovered around the corners of his lips. As soon as he smiled, the youthful sun image he'd maintained the whole way vanished in an instant. Under the painted face were the same familiar formula and was same familiar flavor. Okay, Feidu ambiguously lowered his voice and drew closer to Lo Wen-jo's ear. Or were you hoping I had some other intentions, Captain Law? This was one of a playboy's customary moves, now distant and now close. Why am I struggling with words today? Reconnoitering, while not crossing a line, giving no reason, enigmatically dropping a lure and running away. Anyone who couldn't resist the curiosity and chased after to investigate would be marching step by step to his tempo. My goodness. Lowenjaw was a kindred spirit. He knew all the moves perfectly well, though this was the first time anyone had used them on him. He couldn't pronounce a judgment or ask a question. The sharp rise and gentle fall of this provocation had left his heart and mind full of wild animals. At the same time, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. With a breath, Lowenjaw forced down the fur and talons scratching at the pit of his stomach and presented a move of standing his ground. After a pause, he simply opened the door and patted the car. Nice car, though it's a waste when you can't drive fast in the city. Thanks. See you. Then Lowenjaw very naturally got out of the car, pretending that nothing had happened, and went home to feed his cat without looking back. Oh my goodness. Fedu sat in the car watching his back until Lowenjaw had gone into the building. Then he slowly started the car. I'm living for this flirting though, I have to say. You're welcome, he said to himself. See you tomorrow. The next day, Captain Law returned to his old profession of delivering takeout, swaggering into the office. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a few colleagues moving desks. Fedu did not, in the span of one night, find himself a position in the city bureau, did he? That's the only reason why I can think of them suddenly moving desks. What's going on? Director Tung just came by and said we have a new colleague reporting today, Taran said, showing his head. We're getting a place for them to sit. Oh right, I remember now. Lowenjaw put a breakfast on the table and indicated that they should all help themselves. I've been so busy I'd forgotten. I got the transfer order before. Is he reporting today? You all know him. It's that little glasses from the Flower Market District sub-bureau. Oh, yay! So he's officially joining. While the investigation into Wang Hongliang, was ongoing, he was suspended and also under investigation. The investigation just ended. He seems like a pretty clear thinker and a good worker, so I simply wrote up and had him transferred over. Taran stared. It's Xiaohai Yang? Before Lowenjaw could answer, someone stuck their head in through the office's door. Captain Law, Director Tung wants you to come over. Lowenjaw gave an affirmative, grabbed a portable package of tofu curd, stepped into the store, well, that's not at all what's written there. Lowenjaw gave an affirmative, grabbed a portable package of tofu curd, stuck in the straw as wide as his thumb, and stirred twice, drinking as he walked. By the time he got to Director Tung's office, he drank the one-time use cup dry. Lowenjaw was a lazy worm. To save a few steps, he took aim at a hallway trash can 2 meters away and made an easy free throw. The plastic cup went sailing into the basket. Oh my goodness, he's so extra sometimes. He hadn't yet celebrated his own perfect shot when the door of the office next to him opened from inside. Tseng Guangling pushed at his glasses and looked at Lowenjaw coldly. It's a true waste of your talents that you didn't go into the NBA. Director Tseng had originally been a forensics expert. Later, because old Director Zhang had valued his eternal professionalism and accuracy, he'd forced him into a management position, giving him an assortment of things to attend to one after another. One day, he'd make him responsible for presiding over a party member conference. The next, he'd make him produce official documents, and the day after that, he'd give him to take a hand. He'd have him take a hand in administrating human resources, racking his brain to arrange all kinds of practice for him. With all this practice, Director Tseng didn't want to live anymore, thinking every day of handing in his resignation, growing increasingly icy. When Lo and Jo had first been transferred to the city bureau, had often gone to crime scenes with Director Tseng. Tseng Guangling's disposition was strict. He couldn't stand the sort of little troublemaker Lo and Jo had been back then. Lo and Jo got told off by him nearly every day, and had long ago cultivated a face of impenetrable diamond to present to him. Fully unconcerned, he went into Director Tseng's office with a cheeky grin. "That's true. It's all because my heart is devoted to serving the people that I could stand to give up an annual salary of $10 million US. I deserve to have my praises sung. I hear we have an old acquaintance." Okay, before he could pronounce the "uns," Lo and Jo froze. There were two people in Tseng Guangling's office. One was the expected Xiao Haiyang. Seeing him come in, Xiao Haiyang very properly stood up and greeted him, "Captain Lo." As for the individual next to him, he evidently wasn't so proper. "I really am an old acquaintance." Feidu's gaze first made a circuit from Lo and Jo's chest to his knees. When he finished enjoying the free show, he smiled as he took up Lo and Jo's words. "I just ate a meal at Captain Lo's house last month." Tseng Guangling was one of the city bureau's elders. He'd watched Lo and Jo grow from a spoiled child who didn't understand anything into the captain of the criminal investigation team. Even if he never said it, he was still well aware of some annoying details about his personal life. Hearing Feidu's words, Director Tseng immediately got the wrong idea, fiercely rolling his eyes at Lo and Jo, and said significantly, "Since we all know each other, let's not waste words." Last year, the City Bureau and Yan Security Uni's graduate program planned a collaborative research project, with Lao Zhang leading the way. They wanted to use practical experience to get as many theories and to support their theories with practical experience. Take, for example, the case we just had, the kidnapping and killing of young girls that spanned 20 years. There's a lot of research value there. Yan Security Uni has already established a special research group. Xia Fei is our contact person. When Zhou may seem unreliable, but he's actually pretty good at keeping his private life separate from his public life, right? These two, I can't decide how I feel about the fact that Director Tseng is completely misreading the situation, but also completely not. Lo and Jo, ... What kind of an unreliable research group would choose this bit of goods as a contact person? Had the alma mater's other graduate students all died off? Tseng Guangling said, "Xiao Xiao, you just came. First, get to know everyone. There are many young people on the criminal investigation team now. You'll assimilate easily. Feidu?" Feidu uncrossed his legs. Under Lo and Jo's extremely pained gaze, he gently and harmlessly called, Teacher Tseng? so harmlessly. Hey, hey, no need to be so polite. Teng Guangling was evidently pleased by this manner of address, a trace of a smile involuntarily appearing on his icicle-like face, his voice warmed by at least 3 degrees. In fact, I did teach for 2 years. I suppose you could call me your Da Shishong. Your Lao Pan called me. If I need anything, go ahead and bring it. Sorry, if you need anything, go ahead and bring it up. You can come to my office anytime. First, Law and was on the receiving end of a one-on-one talk from Director Tung. This middle-aged man's gaze and suspicions had strayed off into outer space. He raised entirely unreasonable questions and criticisms against Lo Wenjo's personal integrity. Then Lo Wenjo got hauled off to Director Lu's office for a political awareness-raising meeting about this research project. By the time he dragged his weary steps back to the criminal investigation team, he suddenly found that it was no longer the office he knew. I'm so happy I'm right about Feidu somehow worming his way into the city bureau, because I want to see them working together in normal circumstances. I think it's gonna be hilarious and so frustrating for Lo Wenjo in the best way possible. Oh, okay. We are 4 minutes past the hour, so I'm quickly gonna take the 10-minute break and then we will be back at 4:15 for the last quarter of an hour. Okay, we are back. I hope the audio is still okay. I have new tea with me. And yeah, we can basically just get started immediately. One thing that I probably should have mentioned at the start of this, but that I kind of like forgot about just a little bit. So I'll be mentioning it in the upcoming next like few read-alongs, just in case people maybe miss this one and then hear it in the next one or so on. But I'm considering maybe for the week of my birthday to, instead of the normal read-alongs, having anyone who's keen submitting their stories or like novels that they would like me to check out or something like that, and we can read the first chapter of the submitted stories, whether it be submitted that is like stories that are your own or just the first chapter of ones that you guys would love me to check out. I know that it's kind of an idea in progress, but I did want to mention it in case anyone thinks it's a cool idea and maybe wants to prep something for that. My birthday is the 11th of August, so it's going to be around about there. Anyway, okay, sorry, that's a total sidetrack. I just did want to mention that. But yeah, let's get back to it. Chapter 61, Macbeth 2. Looking at his office, to which an extra desk had been added, Louandreau leaned with one hand on the door and silently waited for Taran to explain. There's really nowhere to fit another desk outside, Taran said carefully from behind Louandreau. No, they're not gonna share an office. I'm not ready. But set your mind at ease. I just asked Fedu, and he said he'll only be coming once or twice a week. He won't be here every day. Once this research project is over, they'll disperse. It won't be very long. He'll only be here with you temporarily for a few days. Lowendel's gaze swept over the enormous air purifier in the corner, then fell on the door. The space originally piled up with junk had been cleaned up, and a fully automated coffee machine had been placed there instead, along with a little refrigerator around a meter high. The refrigerator was jammed full of cold beverages with the scripts of all nations written on them. There was a note on the door that read, "Help yourself, don't be shy." This battle array really didn't seem like temporary for a few days. Oh goodness. Deputy Captain Tao was rendered speechless. He gave a dry cough and grabbed at the mess on his head, making it even wilder. If you'd taken off his head, you could have used it as a steel wool scourer. He squinted at Louandreau's face and diffidently said, "Anyway, when I saw you in this car yesterday, you two seemed to be getting on pretty." Louandreau, his face expressionless, turned to stare fixedly at him. "Well," said Taran. Like, yes, they are, but they don't want you acknowledging that, Taran. Like, that breaks some kind of mental gymnastics rule. Oh, sorry, such a fun idea. Do you also want to read fanfics? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily mind, but I think I would have to limit it to fanfics of shows that I've reacted to, and also it would have to be fanfics that you've written. I don't know how I would feel about reading fanfics of people that aren't part of my audience, because I mean, I think fanfics are something that people do for fun, so I wouldn't want to expose a fanfic that someone doesn't necessarily want to just be out there instead of contained within that little universe. I don't know why, I feel like it being encroaching on someone's personal space in a sense, which is weird, but yeah, that's it. Lorenzo snorted. Taran held himself back for a while, but in the end he couldn't resist asking, "What's going on with you two? How do I know what he's eaten wrong?" While there was no one in the office during the midday break, Lorenzo sighed and issued a very pained complaint to Taran. "He hasn't been looking to pick a fight recently. He's been teasing me non-stop instead. The bastard. He doesn't know my orientation is... Doesn't he know my orientation is unconventional?" I think he does. I think that's why he's doing what he's doing, to be fair. Taran... ... "Well," said Lorenzo, "if you have something to say, say it." "Well, you know, Fedu..." Taran struggled to find the right wording. "I've always thought that children who grow up in those rather complicated surroundings become worldly wise when they're very young. They have a strong sense of propriety, especially in front of girls. You sometimes get the feeling that all his sweet talking is just to make you happy, and he doesn't mean anything else by it. He's extremely familiar with all kinds of hints and subtext. If he doesn't want to cross a line, then he'll very carefully avoid it, aka whatever line he's crossing with you he means to cross. Is that what I'm reading here? Hearing this, Lorenzo understood Taran's implication. Either the narcissistic self-love from his teenage years was metastasizing? I've never heard that word. Or Fedu wanted to cross a line. He didn't respond, so Taran could only mumble himself to a stop. The two of them looked at each other helplessly for a moment. Lorenzo couldn't tell what he was feeling. Taran also had a complicated expression of not knowing himself what he was saying. Lorenzo's feelings for Fedu had always been very complicated. On the one hand, he really had been very concerned about him, never able to resist looking after him a little. On the other hand, Fedu did often make him incandescently angry. They'd known each other over 7 years, and most of that time they'd been locked in a head-on-head struggle. Outwardly, it sometimes had the look of well-matched opponents who appreciated each other's talents. Whatever Fedu did, Lorenzo's first reaction was always to wonder what mischief he was up to now. But Taran's words had opened a never-before-opened door in his mind. After a good while, Lorenzo finally asked, "Where is Fedu?" "He took everyone out to eat, of course he did," said Taran. "I waited here to go over there with you. It's that hotel right by the door." At this point, his words again came to an abrupt halt, because he'd once again remembered the surpassingly sumptuous midnight snack from a month before. Now he understood what had happened without needing it to be said. The City Bureau had handled 2 major cases in the last half year, and Fedu, under different guises, had participated in both. Young City Bureau Criminal Investigation Team all knew him on sight. But despite knowing him on sight, most of them still didn't know what he did. They only suddenly saw the light when they saw him reserve 3 private rooms at the luxury hotel. This was a local tyrant who'd come to make friends with them. I mean, that's one way to look at it, I suppose. Oh, goodness. At the thought that as long as Feidu was present, the officers on duty could refuse grease, refuse fast food, refuse instant noodles, all of Captain China Luozhou's grunts revolted, even including Lang Chao, who'd had a glimpse of the truth. Oh, goodness. From the other side of the private room's door, Luozhou heard Lang Chao selling him with vim and vigor. Are you leaving when the project's over? Will you come again afterwards? Why don't you simply come work with us when you graduate? You're fated to be at the city bureau. We'll leave the desk for you. Captain Lord definitely won't mind. He's just a little sharp-tongued, but his temper is actually very good. He brings everyone breakfast every morning, and sometimes he'll cook up something special at home and bring it to work to give everyone a little extra. His culinary skills are really... The person next to her spoke at her shoulder. Lang Chao shook it off. What? What about our Imperial Presence's culinary skills? Said Luozhou. Lang Chao's spine stiffened, and she clutched at her throat, turning her head with a crack. She was just in time to see Luozhou walk through the door, looking at her with a fake smile. He warmly said, "Eldest princess, why don't you go home and gather your things? Get ready to be sent to North Korea for a political marriage." Damn, he was ready to just throw her all the way out there. Do you have any specific genres you prefer, or anything you don't want to read? Reading, I'm generally more open than I am with viewing, because I'm not a very visual person, or visually imaginative person, I don't know. But cannibalism, I would say, and incest, those things I tend to avoid. Yeah, those two are like the ones that crop up weirdly often in fan fiction that I'm like, I wish I knew this was a thing. So yeah, those two I very much would like to avoid. Light horror in written form, I don't mind as much. Okay. And also Tata Sharp today. No one knows Feidu's courting style better than Taran, that's fair. And Achao's definitely trying to play matchmaker. I don't think she's succeeding necessarily. Lang Chao turned pale with fright. Imperial father, your subject child has erred. Oh no. Luozhou looked up and squarely met Feidu's gaze. Feidu was once again perfectly playing the character of the rich kid, with his usual eye-searing get-up, the sight of which raised sparks of rage. What Taran had said was still going around and around on replay, pressing on Luozhou's arteries like a fishbone in the throat, sticking so firmly that his blood pressure had gone up a few dozen points. He slowly walked up to the empty seat beside Feidu, ignoring the person next to him as much as he could. He rolled up the sleeves of his shirt and spoke, adopting a rare bureaucratic tone in front of his colleagues. First, I'll pass along the gist of the meeting Director Liu just held. This plan of collaborative project with Yan Security Uni was first implemented many years ago. It was called the Picture Album Project at the time. It later fell through for a certain reason. Last year, Director Zhang was recalling past events and wrote to his superiors a few times. Though he's recently moved on, if this project can get results in the future, it will supply a great deal of help to your work. I hope you'll all be able to actively cooperate. Louandreau was very rarely this solemn on private occasions. No one dared to make a sound. It will be very strictly managed. The research groups must follow all of the Bureau's internal regulations in the process of requesting files. They have to be signed out and recorded. Materials relating to details of cases that haven't been made public can't be copied, photographed, or removed from the City Bureau. Everyone at the research group has to sign confidentiality agreements. That's discipline. Besides that, Louandreau gave Feydeau a quick look. I hope our contact person will be able to restrain his easygoing style. Oh my word. The City Bureau isn't a school, and it isn't your enterprise. You can't come and go as you please. I heard Director Tsang say you were planning to come every Tuesday and Friday. Then, on those 2 days, you'll follow normal working hours. If you come late, leave early, or want to change the times at the last minute, you'll need to have a proper reason and an excuse note. Does this pose any difficulty? If it does, I recommend you switch to a different contact person. I gotta say, I kind of respect him for immediately setting up the work boundaries. I know it's gonna make flirting more difficult potentially, but I'm here for it. And also now he has an excuse to come to work early, because he can be like, okay, I have to be on time in any way. I might as well pick you up and drive you to work with me. Just saying. At first, everyone had still been listening solemnly. By the middle of Louandreau's speech, the whole table full of criminal investigation team personnel was looking at him with hard-to-describe expressions, not speaking, quietly watching this king of being easygoing pretending to hold the high ground. He hadn't finished expressing himself from his high ground. He thought about it, then said to Feydeau, "Besides that, our official resources are limited. You've seen that. Ordinarily, only major cases come up to the City Bureau's criminal investigation team. You may run into all kinds of crime scenes. Blood and guts are commonplace. If you see something horrifying, okay, to be fair, he is afraid of blood, so I can't remember what the official term for it is. So that is kind of potentially a problem." Lang Chao, unable to resist, interrupted him. "Imperial Father, are you going to eat? You still have to act as if it's nothing. Go back and eat your meals normally." Louandreau gave her a cold glance. "We only have the law here. We aren't prepared for emergency medical care. Comrades who vomit or faint at the least whiff of blood are advised to reconsider their choices." He's really, really not holding back. Without turning her hair, Feydeau answered, "Thank you for the reminder, Captain Law." Over the last half year, the swords-drawn, bows-bent atmosphere between the two of them had turned into something full of turbulent undercurrents and increasing torment to each other. Taran could only firmly interrupt Louandreau's education, stepping forward to mediate. "Oh, why haven't I heard of this picture album project? It was over a decade ago. You hadn't even gone to university yet." Louandreau gave him some face and let Feydeau off for the moment. Back then, the miraculous science of psychological profiling had just come to our country from abroad. There were many unsuccessful attempts. Shao Haiyang, who was always rather silent, suddenly spoke. Why was it called to a halt? Louandreau paused in the middle of wiping his hands on a moist towelette, then, as if nothing was the matter, said, "Our capabilities hadn't matured then. There was no practical value to it." "Enough. Go ahead and eat. Don't overindulge and forget your duties. Aren't you going to work this afternoon? There was no meeting scheduled for this afternoon, nor was there any important work. Law and Jaw indifferently examined a document about reinforcing security procedures throughout the city for National Day, making mental preparations not to have a moment's peace 2 days out of the week now that Feidu had been added to the office. But Feidu was unexpectedly quiet. He didn't act up or talk nonsense. He sat there peacefully, going through some materials, a living person not making as much noise as the air purifier next to him. Why is that such a funny sentence? The greatest commotion his arrival caused was that all the colleagues simultaneously shunned the instant coffee and lined up with their cups to get the fresh ground stuff. The air purifier hummed. Next to that were only the small sounds of fingers from time to time flipping a page. It was the sleepy period of autumn. After nesting at his desk for a while, Luanjo became increasingly drowsy, dozing over the dry official document. When he woke, he found that Feidu was in the same position as before, but at some point a jacket had been draped over Luanjo, and the window blowing towards his back had been closed. I'm such a sucker for small things like that. Luanjo stopped the falling jacket and looked over. Luanjo stopped the falling jacket and looked over from behind his computer. Feidu really was very pleasing to the eye. Anyone who had eyes had to admit it. Luanjo couldn't resist once again carefully recalling Taran's words, admitting that what Taran had said made sense. Feidu wasn't a youth who didn't understand the gravity of things, nor was he Zhang Donglai, who'd sleep with any living creature. He was well acquainted with all the unspoken rules of society, where others had only a vague concept about the word ambiguity. Feidu could split the different shades of ambiguity into 100 parts and bring each degree precisely into play. That is beautifully put. Clearly knowing Luanjo was gay, if Feidu had only been joking, he wouldn't have used this degree. But Luanjo gently moved the mouse, dispelling the screensaver. He also felt he shouldn't be presuming too far. Why would this project choose Feidu, who had just started his studies, as a contact person? Had all the senior students died off? There had to be some kind of strategy at work here. Luanjo wouldn't have believed otherwise even if he'd beaten him to death. And Feidu had started planning last year to enter Yan Security Uni. He'd received his acceptance notice in April, and the frequency with which he ran over to the city bureau for all kinds of reasons had increased ever since. He was already familiar with the whole criminal investigation team, even with the whole city bureau. Didn't the graduate program choosing him as their contact person also enter into this consideration? This whole clear sequence of events and ideal course of action were permeated with sense of deliberate scheming. Feidu was like an attractive poisoned apple. Taking a bite would clearly turn your guts, but smelling it still made your mouth instinctively water. Luanjo moved, slightly relaxing his spine, which he'd been holding so straight it was about to stiffen in place. He strove to rein in his lust, which was about to go out of control, remembering a piece of information Feidu had let slip. That article of his that had reportedly been included in an academic text had been a study concerning the victims in criminal cases. Why would it be on that subject? While Luanjo was spying on Feidu from behind his computer, Feidu suddenly got up and went over to him. Luanjo was startled, but he saw that Feidu seemed not to have noticed his gaze. He only went to the water cooler at the door, not forgetting to bring over Luanjo's cup, refilling it with water. Luanzhou thanked him and was about to take the cup, but Fei Du held onto it, his fingertips deliberately moving forward, touching Luanzhou. Okay? Why am I such a sucker for small things like this? Fei Du rested a hand on his desk, looking loftily down on Luanzhou. He leaned down and lowered his voice. If you want to look, Captain Law, go ahead and look all you want. I don't charge. Luanzhou didn't move. In the same sort of low voice, he said, Is it popular at your school right now to harass your superiors? Fei Du looked into Luanzhou's eyes with a certain carnivorous expression for a while. Then he smiled, turned, and strolled back to his temporary workstation. If you want to hang someone, you can always find a pretext. If Captain Law feels my presence is harassment, there's really nothing I can do. Luanzhou got out his cigarettes, glanced at the air purifier, then stuck his cigarettes in his pocket and headed towards the restroom, feeling that he'd really be pure of heart and free of desire for too long. Having somehow made it to the end of the workday, Luanzhou found that Fei Du showed no signs of leaving. Luanzhou picked up his keys and consciously or unconsciously glanced at the document he was holding. He found that Fei Du was reviewing Xu Wenchao's confession. His gaze had been stopped on a certain page for a long time. Fei Du seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. Seeming to understand his question from his steps, he slowly said, Xu Wenchao said that Guo Heng found him while he was in the process of following Wu Guangchuan. After they spoke, Guo Heng had some suspicion about Wu Guangchuan and Su Shaolan's relationship. When he failed to get assistance from the police, Guo Heng began to investigate Wu Guangchuan in private, and Xu Wenchao tailed him for him. Yes, said Luanzhou. Fei Du leaned back lightly. This seems a little strange to me. Luanzhou put a hand on the back of his chair, reaching past Fei Du's shoulder to trace the words with his fingertip. What's strange about it? Guo Heng asked for Xu Wenchao's help when he had no other choice. We've tacitly acknowledged that Guo Heng divulged the details of Guo Fei's kidnapping to Xu Wenchao during this process. Luanzhou said, That's what Guo Heng said himself. It's been over 20 years. Guo Heng wouldn't necessarily clearly recall what he'd said, but I've thought all along it was strange for him to share details like the bells in the pencil box with Xu Wenchao. In the eyes of Guo Heng and the police back then, this detail had no investigative value aside from proving that the phone call was connected to Guo Fei's disappearance. What's more, it had caused Guo Heng severe psychological trauma. Imagine his psychological state then. Under what circumstances would he talk about that detail? Luanzhou said, for example, if someone asked, How did you know it was your daughter on the phone? How did you know it was your daughter on the phone? Fei Du shook his head. That sounds as though Xu Wenchao were verifying the truth of what Guo Heng had said. Luanzhou came around at once. Only a person who knew absolutely nothing would react to Guo Heng's words by instinctively trying to verify their truth. Xu Wenchao, meanwhile, already knew about Wu Guangchuan and Su Shaolan's twisted relationship, and he also knew that Su Shaolan was the chief culprit in the serial kidnappings. With all that clear as a mirror in his heart, would he have acted like he knew absolutely nothing so convincingly? If that's the case, then Xu Wenchao is too frightening, said Fei Du. But if it isn't the case, why would Guo Heng talk about the detail on his own initiative, pouring out his heart? If you were Guo Heng, with a child over 10 years old and already entering middle age yourself, would you pour out your heart to a boy 12 or 13 years old? Sulujan said she only got the idea of imitating Sushalan after reading her diary, but I was just thinking about it carefully. In Sushalan's diary, aside from describing her excitement when she called the victims as families, there was no mention of the detail about the pencil box. Fedu tapped the desk with his fingers. So how did the little girl know? I'm struggling to follow this a little bit, but I'm hoping they're not implying that Guoheng is actually part of all this, because that's kind of what it's sounding like right now. Lowenjo froze. Before he could follow this frightening line of thought, the phone on his desk suddenly rang. Lowenjo picked it up. You haven't left yet? Good, said Director Lu. The problem is a rather thorny one, Wenjo. See who's still on duty and go over there yourself to have a look. Dun dun dun. Okay, I don't think we're gonna get through another chapter, but I do want to try and get through at least 4 more pages if possible. Just want to see here. Crosses on when pushing vortex. Non-con is the other thing that I don't mess with at all. Like, I can handle it sometimes, but I prefer not to. Like, if I can avoid it, I want to avoid it. But yeah, angst depending, but also because we only have, like, I'm only gonna be doing, if I do this, I'm only gonna be doing the first chapter of the things that are sent to me. I don't think there would necessarily be enough time for angst, but I do like thinking about some of the books and also some of the fics that I've personally read. I might need to do a word count limit or like a page limit instead of a chapter limit, because some of those chapters can get very long. Okay. Chapter 62, Macbeth 3. A car crash? Lowenjo asked in astonishment. Why do you need me for a car crash? Send the traffic police next door to deal with it. Yu Liang said, have you heard of Zhuo Junmao? Which Zhuo Junmao? Lowenjo gave a start, feeling the radiant afternoon light become turbulent. Not that Zhuo Junmao. Next to him, Fei paused. He silently raised his head. Zhuo Junmao was a famous overseas Chinese national, 73-year-old this year. He had been born in the East Daoguo district on the outskirts of Yan City and sojourned overseas when he was young. Starting from nothing, he had worked hard dealing in building materials and had later built the Zhuo clan conglomerate, an enormous multinational enterprise. In recent years, as he'd gotten older, he'd perhaps begun to think of returning to his roots. The core of the Zhuo clan's investments had begun trending back to China. Zhuo Junmao wasn't an ordinary celebrity. He was low-key and lived simply. He was very public-spirited. He had in particular made outstanding contributions towards building up the infrastructure of his hometown. He was responsible for half of all the prosperity in the East Daoguo district. There was a road there called Junmao Road, the only road in the whole Yan City area named for a living person. Half an hour ago, Zhuo Junmao had been en route for the airport to his Yan City residence when his car had met with a tailgating truck. The rear of the car had been smashed in, and the old man sitting in the back seat had died on the spot. The driver and the bodyguard in the passenger seat had been seriously injured and were receiving emergency care at the hospital. This was a very bitter traffic accident. It could be imagined that there would be a dramatic impact on the Jor clan's stocks once the news got out. And now the Jor family's younger son, who happened to be in Yan City, was maintaining that his father had been murdered and insisting that the police handle it. Interesting. But yeah, I also kinda wouldn't be surprised. Like, it does feel a little bit convenient. Director Tsang has already gone over with the medical examiners. We'll go to the scene to have a look, say a word to the traffic police team, then go to the Jor house. When Jor was heading towards the airport highway, taking along Lang Chao, who'd been on duty, Xiao Haiyan, who hadn't felt comfortable leaving early on his first day at work, and an extraneous Fei Du. Relax, it won't be another month of working overtime. We don't even know what's happened yet. Even if the car crash was deliberate, I figure the Economic Crimes Division will take the lead and we'll be assisting them at most. Lang Chao stretched out her head curiously. President Fei, you know so many rich people. Have you ever met Zhou Junmao? I've met him, though I couldn't really speak to him. Fei Du, seeming to have become a model student, still maintained his studious attitude, sitting in a car headed out to the field. I'm more familiar with his younger son, the same one who's insisting on calling the police. Lang Chao looked down and started researching online. Zhou Junmao has 2 sons. The eldest is Zhou Huaijin. Oh, a youthful talent. Went to all the famous schools, started helping manage his family's assets very young, stays abroad most of the year. The second son is Zhou Huaixin. He's a painter? Hey, President Fei, is this the one you mean? How do you two know each other? Is it because you both like art? Oh no, Fei Du answered. It's because we're both Westrels who don't do any honest work. Well, he might not do honest work, but at least he's honest about it. Oh my goodness. There was no Lang Chao, ... There was no traffic heading out to the city on the airport highway, and it wasn't yet fully dark. They soon arrived at the scene. Fei Du was about to get out of the car when Luo and Zhou pushed him back inside. First, he started, and then he came around. His lips moved slightly. He looked at Luo and Zhou's receding back like a weasel that had been soothed by a chicken thigh. He didn't display happiness, only calmly sat waiting in the car. Luo and Zhou walked around the scene and found that the dead and the wounded had already been taken away and the scene had basically been cleaned up. As long as you didn't look very closely at the spots circled by yellow tape, you could hardly find any traces of blood. Only then did he beckon, letting Fei Du out of the car. You know, it's the little things, like checking if there's any blood before your lover gets out of the car. Or future lover, I suppose. Fei Du followed him and said lightly into his ear, Captain Law, I'm overwhelmed by the favor. Overwhelmed just like that? Luo and Zhou glanced at him steadfastly. Your mental landscape must be very thrilling. Lao Chue, where are you looking? Over here. The traffic policeman responsible for handling this accident was surnamed Chue. He was another acquaintance of Luo and Zhou's. The world was full of Captain Law's acquaintances, covering all walks of life. Oh goodness, he's one of those, is he? Fei Du, looking on from the side, thought that a person like Luo and Zhou must have grown up in a very relaxed and open-minded surroundings. After the experiences he had withered and the viciousness of the human heart he had known, becoming even more astute and sensitive than his profession required. Only through having been doted on and cared for unreservedly in his youth could he have maintained that bone-deep readiness to take the whole world into his embrace. Sometimes when you stood looking out into the street, watching the people pass by, men and women, young and old, you'd feel that they were all about the same. Sorry, hold on. Sorry about that. It's not getting better. You're wearing a button-down and pants, and I'm also wearing a button-down and pants. You looked down and saw that the old people jogging by the street and the golden-haired, green-eyed foreigners were all wearing the same brand of sneakers, almost giving you an illusion that the whole world was the same. The people living in the sun couldn't imagine the inescapable and customary torment that the smiling and chatting buddy next to them suffered, while a person deep in depression couldn't understand that human figures rushing past them really weren't forcing themselves to smile. Just like now, with him and Law and Jaw standing together, at first glance it seemed like they were from the same country. The body often hid the truth so firmly that not a drop leaked out. If you want to know whether there's some inside story to this, you'll have to investigate it. If you ask me, anyway, it looks like an accident that the vehicle driving in the back was completely responsible for. The traffic policeman, Lao Chia, called them over to look at the surveillance cameras. This Bentley is Zhou Junmao's car. It left the airport and drove along normally. The chauffeur's driving was pretty law-abiding. There was no problems. The truck responsible for the accident came on from the Beiyuan bridge. He started numbering from the camera at the Beiyuan exit. That's number 1. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna leave it here because my voice is kind of going right now. And we are on page 40, so I think we made pretty good progress, more than I was expecting. I just want to check here because we're both queer as yeah, I think that's what everyone was thinking when they said that. Remind me again who said, if you're scared of blood, give up on this internship. Yeah, no, we don't know. We can't remember who said that at all. Yeah, I have to say, I really enjoyed this. This was fantastic, and it's nice to get just a little, like, very, very brief respite from the intensity that was the Lolita case, and now we're obviously jumping into the next case, but I liked the little bit of breathing that we got in between the two of that, because yeah, that was just glorious. I can't believe we now have the two of them sharing an office and openly flirting, and like Law and Jaw is almost certain that Feidu is flirting with him, but he's still somehow in denial at the same time. It is very impressive. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys again on Thursday for the next round of Mordu, and it's gonna be same time as normal, so at 7 p.m. GMT. I do want to remind you guys, because YouTube has currently been very difficult, shall I say, about actually notifying people. I thought it was only my normal videos that were giving issues, and then I was told that my live stream alerts were also not going out. So when in doubt, just come check. I usually try and put schedule the streams about 2 to 3 hours ahead of time, so you can just then put the notification on, and it should help. I don't know what YouTube is doing right now, why it's making life so difficult. But otherwise, you can just come check in at 7 p.m. GMT on Thursday, because I really generally do try and be at least somewhat on time and like consistent with read-alongs, so people know when to expect them. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you guys again on Thursday. 再见。